I wasn't planning to tell this story. Honestly, I thought I'd just live through it and forget it. But some moments dig too deep under your skin to stay silent. And sometimes the only way to pull out the splinter is to admit to yourself exactly how you let people walk all over you. For 3 years, I was that convenient employee. Reliable, calm, predictable to the point of boredom. The guy who finished tasks, never caused trouble, never raised his voice, and never made management answer for their own mistakes. And maybe that's exactly why they chose me as the sacrifice when the new HR needed someone to pin her failure on. That Monday, I arrived at work earlier than usual. The office smelled like cheap coffee. The printer behind the wall scraped like broken teeth. And there was already a yellow sticky note on my desk. Come to HR at 9. No greeting, no explanation, just that. I remember feeling a cold knot under my ribs. Rumors had been circulating that someone messed up a major client report. I wasn't even part of that project. But when HR is looking for a culprit, logic tends to slip out the back door. She was sitting behind a glass desk. Straight posture, straight smile, straight voice. Everything about her felt mechanical. Sit, she said without looking up. I sat. We reviewed the results of the Axiom project, she continued, and found serious violations. I wasn't on the Axiom team, I replied quietly. Yes, she finally lifted her eyes. But according to the documents, you signed the report. Me? I've never signed anything like that in my life. She slid a sheet of paper toward me. The signature really was mine, or looked like mine. You understand this is grounds for termination? She said, as if discussing the weather. I didn't sign that. She closed the folder. You can contest it, but there's no point. The manager confirmed you were responsible for the final review. That's a mistake. Possibly, but it doesn't change the decision. The entire meeting lasted 7 minutes and 43 seconds. I know because your brain starts tracking time with strange precision when you're thrown out like a trash bag. She handed me an envelope. You're terminated. You can collect your personal items by the end of the day. I walked out of her office like I'd stepped out of dark water. No anger, no fear, just emptiness. People around me were typing, laughing, scheduling meetings, and none of them knew I was already gone. I went to my desk, neatly packed my things into a box, shut down my laptop. No one even turned their head. But the real blow came that evening when my brother called. Are you home? He asked. Yeah. I need to tell you something, and you're not going to believe it. He arrived 20 minutes later. He looks exactly like me, down to the last hair. Our voices, our handwriting, everything identical. The only difference is personality. I'm quieter. He's louder. He walked in and immediately sat on the edge of the couch, like the floor might collapse under him. Listen, your company called me today. They invited me for an interview. For my job? I asked. No, they thought I was you. I felt my whole body go still, like the blood stopped moving. What? I went there, he continued, and HR introduced me to the team. As you. She said you were promoted today, and she personally pushed for it. He gave a nervous, disbelieving smile, the kind you get when the world becomes absurd. They didn't even ask for an ID, not a single document. They just accepted me as you. I sat in silence. For 3 years I had been a ghost to them, so invisible that they could replace me with anyone, as long as the signature matched. What did you do? I asked. I said yes. They offered a salary higher than what you were getting. A lot higher. He looked at me seriously, no trace of a joke. And that's why I'm here. Do you want me to go back tomorrow, as you? We can pull this off. We can tear them apart completely, but only if you really want to. I didn't answer right away. I sat there, my hands clenched, feeling everything that had been building up inside me for years finally flip over. They fired me for a mistake I didn't make. They replaced me with a copy without even looking at my face. They treated me like disposable material. I lifted my head. Yes, I said. Tomorrow you're going back, but not alone. That's where we paused, but I didn't yet know that everything up until that moment was just a quiet prologue, because the real story only begins when someone who's been invisible their whole life finally stops being afraid of being seen. My twins showed up at my place the next morning before sunrise, holding two identical coffee cups like we were about to commit a small, morally justified crime. He looked awake, sharp, almost amused. I looked like a man who hadn't slept because his life had flipped upside down in 24 hours. "Ready?" he asked. "I'm not sure ready is the word," I said. "Good. Means you'll think clearly." He left first, dressed like me, walking like me, carrying my old work bag. I followed him an hour later, sitting in my car across the street from the office building, watching through the windshield as he swiped my badge and walked in without a single question from security. That was the moment the irritation began boiling. Because if you can replace a person without even looking twice, then that person never mattered to you in the first place. Around noon, he texted me, "You need to hear this in person. Come by the coffee shop at 12:15. When I walked into the cafe, he was sitting at a small table against the wall, jaw clenched, knuckles tense around his drink. "They're unbelievable," he said the moment I sat down. "Not just toxic, proudly toxic." I waited. He leaned forward. "You know that HR woman who fired you? She told me today, told you that she saved your position, that you were very close to losing your job because of consistent performance issues." "I had no performance issues," I said quietly. "I know," he replied, "but she said it like she was doing you a favor, like she rescued you." My stomach twisted. "And your boss?" he continued. "He tried to take credit for your work within 2 hours of me being there. 2 hours, he literally said. I'll put my name on the deck, but great start." "Great start, Carl. I didn't even make the deck. It was in your old folders." Of course he did. That man had been stealing credit since my second month at the company. "And wait for it," my brother said. He also told me he mimicked our boss's smug tone. "You're lucky HR likes you. Frankly, without that push from her, you wouldn't be here after that last mess." "The mess you never made," my brother added. The irritation had shifted to something sharper. Not anger, not yet, but the kind of cold pressure that builds right before anger becomes direction. "They don't see people," I said. "They only see tools." "Wrong," he corrected calmly. "They only see tools until the tools fight back." He pushed his cup aside. "Look, I was planning to just observe today, get a feel for the layout, but your boss is something else. He talks down to every junior staff member like he's allergic to eye contact. He rushes through halls without hearing a single word said to him. He doesn't look at faces. At all." I blinked. "Wait. At all?" "At all," he repeated. "He's either glued to his phone or staring at the floor. You know what that means. That he wouldn't notice that we switched again at any moment," he finished. "Hourly, if we wanted." Something in my chest clicked into place. Not relief, not joy. Purpose. "So here's what I'm thinking," my brother said. "I go in tomorrow again as you, but after lunch, we switch." "That fast?" he shrugged. "Why not? They didn't verify anything. They didn't confirm ID. They didn't check documents. They didn't even look at me for more than 5 seconds. Your boss literally didn't realize your shirt color changed between floors." I exhaled slowly. He gave a small grin. "We can tear their system apart from the inside, not by causing chaos, by exposing the chaos they already created." And then he paused, just long enough to let the next words land. But that was only the beginning. A chill went through me, because something in his voice said he meant it. That afternoon, we prepared. He showed me the layout of the office from memory, where the conference rooms were, which employees sat where, who hated whom, who sucked up to leadership. He explained how my boss had a habit of making huge promises to clients, and then dumping the fallout onto juniors, and how HR defended him, even when he broke policy right in front of her. Because she's covering something, my brother said, or protecting someone. Either way, she's hiding your boss's mistakes. And he's hiding hers, I added. We didn't need revenge. We needed light, and we would shine it so brightly it would burn their little power nest to the ground. The next morning, he walked in first again, perfectly calm. A few hours later, I entered the building through a different entrance and waited in the break room he told me about. At 11:57 a.m., he texted me, "Go to floor 4, conference room, C. He's about to present something he stole from your old folder." I walked there with the kind of calm that only comes after you stop caring about being polite. When I entered the room, my boss turned, opened his mouth to make a snide comment, then froze. Because the man who'd been sitting in that same room with him all morning was still there, across the table. His eyes darted between us, confused, irritated, then panicked, all in 2 seconds. The room went silent. Someone whispered, "Wait, what?" I sat down across from my brother, both of us expressionless, both of us entirely aware of the weight of what we were doing. My boss finally croaked, "Which one of you?" But my brother cut him off smoothly. "We're both here to clarify a few things." And the look on our boss's face, the crack in his fake confidence, that was the first real moment of satisfaction I'd felt in months. That night, for the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel invisible. I felt aligned. I stopped being the hero that night. I stopped trying to be the reasonable one. I realized I'd been saving people who never wanted saving. If you've never watched a man lose control of the world he built out of lies, let me tell you, it doesn't happen all at once. It cracks. Hairline fractures first, barely visible, until the whole thing starts to groan under its own weight. That morning in conference room C was the first crack. My boss stared at us like his brain was buffering. My brother leaned back in his chair, utterly calm. I folded my hands on the table like we were about to negotiate a contract. Around us, half the team pretended to be busy with laptops. The other half openly watched. People don't look away when a predator suddenly realizes he's surrounded. My boss finally managed, What is this?" My brother spoke first. "This is accountability." No raised voice, no theatrics, just a steady tone that made the silence grow teeth. He slid a printed report across the table, the same report my boss had claimed he'd written. The fonts didn't match. The timestamps didn't match. My actual initials were still in the metadata. The man went pale. "You presented this as your work," my brother said, "to the client, without even opening the file." He didn't deny it. He just stared, mouth slightly open like a fish caught mid-breath. But that wasn't the real damage. The real damage came from the watching employees. The juniors he'd yelled at, the analysts he'd humiliated, the designers he ignored. They looked at him differently now, not scared, aware. Awareness is the beginning of revolt. He tried to regain composure, smoothing his tie, clearing his throat. This is highly inappropriate," he snapped. "I don't know how you—" But he didn't get to finish, because the conference room door opened and HR walked in. Her eyes landed on us, 2 identical faces, and something in her expression flickered. Not confusion, calculation. She didn't gasp or ask questions. She knew something was wrong long before this moment. She just didn't know what. My brother stood up slowly. "Perfect timing," he said. "You'll want to see this." He pulled out his phone and played a recording, her voice clear as day. "We'll promote you eventually," she told him yesterday. "But for now, you need to understand that you only have this job because I advocated for you. If your manager needs extra work pushed down, just take it. Don't make things difficult." Her tone in the recording was syrupy, patronizing, the kind of sweet that coats poison. The room went dead still. HR's face drained of color so fast it looked like someone unplugged her. My boss turned to her, furious. "You said you handled this," she snapped. "You said the signature was his." Chaos. Instant. ugly chaos. Two liars trying to outrun the truth and tripping over each other. Employees exchanged looks, the kind that mean everything without a word. Someone whispered, they knew. Someone else whispered, this is bad, for them. HR finally hissed, both of you, my office, now. But my brother only smiled. No, we're done going to your office without witnesses. Her nostrils flared. This is insubordination. No, he said calmly, this is transparency. And then he walked out, leaving her frozen mid-sentence. I followed. The team followed. Even people from other departments poked their heads out of cubicles, sensing smoke. By noon, the fractures spread. My brother and I switched again, this time without hiding it. I walked past HR's office. She called out my name, but I didn't stop. My brother walked past 10 minutes later. She called out again, more frantic. Two identical employees. Two sets of footsteps. Two versions of me. She couldn't control the narrative anymore. She couldn't even track who she was talking to. My boss didn't fare better. He spent the morning dodging questions from his team, the afternoon rewriting an entire report he'd pretended to finish earlier, and the rest of the day glaring at me like his eyes were knives. Every hour we alternated. Confident twin, quiet twin, confident twin, quiet twin, creating a rhythm he couldn't follow. Left, right, shadow, reflection. By 4 p.m., he was unraveling. A junior analyst dropped a data file on his desk. He exploded at her. Full meltdown, calling her careless, incompetent, useless. Her eyes welled with tears. My brother walked by at that exact moment, leaned against the doorframe and said, she's not the careless one here, and everyone knows it. My boss whipped around, red-faced. I told you to fix the... Then I walked in behind him. He froze. Two of me. Two sets of eyes on him. His voice cracked. What is happening? My brother answered softly, but it carried across the whole floor. You've spent years yelling at people who couldn't defend themselves. Now you're not just wrong. You're outnumbered. And that was the moment something broke in him. Not loudly, not dramatically, but visibly. A small internal collapse. The kind that turns bullies into ghosts. By the time HR burst onto the floor, sweaty and breathless, he was already sinking in his chair like a deflated parade balloon. She tried to salvage it. She walked up to us with her best professional authority face and said, we need to discuss what you've both done today. My brother didn't blink. What we've done? He pointed around the office at the confused, frightened, angry employees who had witnessed everything. No, he said. Today we showed them what you've done. And then came the silence, the kind that means something has gone wrong, deeply wrong, the kind that signals the beginning of the end. Security was called. Leadership was alerted. An emergency meeting was scheduled for the next morning. They didn't know it yet, but their house of cards had already collapsed. And the best part? We weren't done. Because the real strike, the one that would bury their corruption for good, was still ahead. The emergency meeting wasn't the showdown I imagined. It was quieter, colder, the kind of room where people lose careers in 3 sentences or less. They booked the big glass conference room upstairs, the one usually reserved for clients and board calls. When my brother and I walked in, leadership was already there. The regional director, legal, HR, my boss, a couple of department heads who looked like they wanted to be anywhere else. No one asked why there were 2 of me anymore. They'd had a night to sit with that question. The regional director started. Gray suit, tired eyes, voice like old paper. Let's start with the obvious, he said. There are 2 of you. One of you is our employee of record. The other isn't. My brother and I exchanged a look. I'm the one you fired, I said. He's the one you promoted by mistake. HR shifted in her chair. My boss stared at the table like he could will it to swallow him. Legal folded her hands. Explain. So we did. We told them everything, how I'd been let go in 7 minutes over a project I never touched. How HR had never investigated, just rubber-stamped whatever my boss handed her. How she'd then rescued me by quietly hiring my identical twin into the same role under the assumption I'd be grateful and compliant. We didn't raise our voices, we didn't embellish. We just laid out the timeline and let their own decisions do the heavy lifting. My brother pulled out his phone and played the recording again, the one where HR admitted I only had this job because she advocated for me, gently nudging me to accept extra work and not cause problems. He then pulled up the report metadata, showing my initials embedded in documents my boss had claimed as his own. He finished with the best part, a copy of my termination email, time-stamped 3 days before my promotion. He slid the printed stack to legal. "You can check every timestamp," he said. "We didn't alter anything. You did this to yourselves." For a moment, nobody said a word. Then the regional director turned to HR. "Did you verify identity when you rehired him?" She swallowed. I had his file. I knew his face. We were moving quickly." He stared at her. "That's not an answer." My boss finally exploded. "This is ridiculous. They're manipulating all of you. They—" Legal cut in, calm but deadly. "Did you or did you not assign work to an employee who was not currently employed by the company?" He hesitated just 1 second too long. I thought HR told me." She didn't look at him. "So that's a yes." It would have been easy to gloat, to rub it in, but I didn't. I just sat there and watched the weight of their own negligence settle on their shoulders. Because that's the thing about revenge. If you do it right, you don't have to swing. You just step out of the way and let gravity handle it. "We can discuss procedures later," legal said. "Right now we have exposure, wrongful termination, hostile work environment, fraudulent reporting on client deliverables, potential identity compliance violations." She ticked them off like grocery items. HR's face went from flushed to chalk. My boss clenched his jaw so hard his temple pulsed. The regional director turned back to me. "You understand we could pursue action against you as well," he said. "Your brother working under your name." I cut in steady. "You could, but you'd have to explain why security never checked IDs, why HR skipped verification entirely, why my boss signed performance reviews for an employee who didn't exist on payroll for 3 weeks." My brother added, "And why the man you fired kept quiet about it instead of calling a lawyer the first day." Legal exhaled softly through her nose. "He's not wrong." For a few seconds, the room hung in that balance, the place where this could have gone nuclear, lawyers on both sides, scorched earth. But that wasn't what I wanted. I didn't want their money. I wanted their accountability. "I don't need a payout," I said. "I need the truth to stick, and I need certain people not to be in a position to do this again." That was the real hook, because if there's anything companies fear more than lawsuits, it's documented patterns. Patterns you can't bury with a memo. The regional director looked at legal. She gave the smallest nod. He turned to HR and my boss. "Step out, please," he said. "We'll call you back in." They started to protest. He shut it down with one look. When they left, he leaned forward, elbows on the table, and dropped the polished corporate tone. "Okay," he said. "Cards on the table. You were treated unfairly. Our processes failed. That's on us. What do you actually want?" It surprised me how simple the answer was once it came out. "I want a clean slate," I said. "Officially. No performance issues in any internal notes. No black mark on my file. I want my termination reversed on record. I want it documented that HR failed procedure and my manager misrepresented my work." "And the job?" he asked. I thought about it. The desk, the stale coffee, the years of swallowing disrespect just to keep the peace. "No," I said. "I don't want to work here. My brother doesn't either. You don't get both of us after treating one of us like a spare part." My brother nodded. "We're not props. Not for your org chart, not for your culture deck." Legal scribbled a few notes. "We can formalize a correction in the HR system. Retroactive reinstatement followed by voluntary resignation. Clean record, no negative remarks." "And them?" I asked. HR, my boss. The regional director looked older than he had an hour ago. HR will be placed on leave pending investigation, he said. Your manager will be removed from his role effective immediately. We'll handle the rest internally. It wasn't cinematic. No dramatic firing speech. No security dragging anyone out. Just consequences. Quiet, bureaucratic, permanent consequences. And somehow that felt better than any scene I could have made. Still, for a second, I thought that was it. That the weight in my chest would just evaporate now that I had my justice. But something else happened first. When we left the conference room, most of the floor was pretending not to watch. My boss's office door was closed. HR's chair sat empty. People hovered with half-shut laptops and full attention. A junior analyst, the one he'd screamed at the day before, caught my eye. She gave me the smallest nod. Not a thank you. More like recognition. Another coworker murmured, Did it work? I shrugged. Depends what you mean by work. My brother, who never missed a beat, said, Let's just say you'll hear fewer shouting matches in the morning. There was a quiet ripple, not applause, not cheering, just shoulders relaxing, jaws unclenching, eyes losing that dull, hunted look. It wasn't my company anymore. But for the first time, I believed it might actually be survivable for the people stuck there, and that was its own kind of revenge. They thought we were gone. We weren't. We just stopped playing by their script. That afternoon, we signed the paperwork. Retroactive reinstatement. Clean separation. No legal fight. Just a series of dry signatures that rewrote the story on record. By the time we walked out of the building for the last time, the sky was overcast, damp, that pale kind of gray that makes everything else look sharper. My brother slung an arm over my shoulder. You know, he said, most people think the craziest part of this story is that we pulled off the switching thing. And it's not? I asked. No, he said. The craziest part is they didn't notice you until there were two of you in the room. We both laughed. Not loudly, not victoriously, just freely. A week later, I started interviews at a different company. Smaller, quieter, less obsessed with image. When they asked why I left my old job, I told the truth without names. My previous employer saw me as replaceable, I said. They were wrong. I'm not here to be a ghost. The hiring manager nodded slowly, like he understood more than he said. I got the offer. My brother found something of his own, not in corporate this time. Freelance consulting. He said he'd had enough of open-plan offices and performative team building. We still joke about it sometimes, usually over late coffee or cheap takeout. He'll say, Remember when HR fired you and promoted me? And I'll say, They didn't promote you. They promoted their own negligence. He'll grin. True, but we promoted ourselves out of there. So was it petty? Maybe. Was it risky? Absolutely. But they gambled first. They bet that nobody would ever call them out, that the quiet guy in the corner would just swallow it and disappear. They fired me without listening. They promoted my twin without looking. They built their whole comfort on the assumption that people like me don't push back. They were wrong. Now I wake up in a place where my name matters, where my work is my own, where respect isn't something I have to negotiate through gritted teeth. The company I left behind, I still hear things. My old boss's name disappeared from the org chart. HR moved on to new opportunities. People say there's less yelling, more documentation, fewer closed doors. That's not my victory to manage anymore. That's just their bill finally being paid. In the end, the best part wasn't watching them fall. It was realizing I don't live in their world anymore. They thought they'd replaced me. They thought they'd upgraded. They thought I was gone. I wasn't. I just chose to stop being the invisible version of myself, picked up my dignity, and walked out the front door with it. And for once, when I left, I didn't feel small. I felt exactly the right size,